Today we're going to learn how to tie the inline Burlington bowline. If you've not already learned how to tie the Burlington bowline the regular way, go learn that first. And then we're going to apply those same ideas kind of backwards in order to use the same knot to tie a column when the end is already anchored down in some fashion. Now, there's a wide variety of reasons you might want to do this. A classic example is if your partner has limited flexibility, they still want to experience having their hands tied behind their back, but they can't do a full box tie. They can't put their hands together behind their back. You can use this technique in a number of different ways. For example, you could use it as I'm showing here, where we have one cuff already tied with the Burlington bowline there, and I'm going to add a second cuff right here, and then tension off the cuff so that my partner's hands are tied like that. But you could also do sort of like a handcuff approach with one wrist tied here and another wrist tied here and then locked in the front or the back, depending on how you want it. There's a lot of really cool options that you can build on once you know how to tie a single column onto a wrist when one end is already anchored down. So let's do this with the Burlington bowline. Now, I already have my partner positioned here. If you're tying this, because you have to put a little bit of a loop in place and then tighten that loop, you have to do a little pre-planning on where your partner's wrists are going to be. So for example, if this was the limit that my partner was able to stand, and this was where I wanted them to be at the end, then I would actually place this wrist a little further down, so I have a little bit of slack to work with, and I put this wrist a little further down, so I have some room to work here, and then when I'm done, I'm going to pull everything up just a little bit tighter. But you don't need to tie them in the full lockdown position when you're doing it like this. So now I'm going to apply the Burlington bowline in this alternative pattern. So first wrap around the target limb, second wrap around the target limb. Give yourself a little space to work there. You need to be able to get your fingers underneath that cuff. Cross over the strands like that. My fingers wouldn't normally be here in this position, but I'm doing it so you can see this, what I'm doing here a little bit more clearly. Now, I would be putting my fingers under here, hooking that line, and pulling it through, like that. Now, I usually do put my finger under here when I'm adjusting the tension because I don't want it to be too tight. So I need to make sure I have a little bit of space to work with there. There we go. Now you'll note we have a little bit of slack here between these two cuffs, and we needed that because we now need to do the rest of the Burlington bowline, which requires a little bit of a loop here, which we can't get if we don't have a little bit of slack. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to put my finger in from the opposite side, and I'm just going to turn it like this. Now that has formed my loop. There's my loop right there. Now I can hook my tail and pull it through that loop. So now I have my loop and I have my tail on this side. And now I'm going to do with the same thing we do with the standard Burlington bowline. Run my finger underneath the cuff, hook the tail, and pull it through. But you notice I haven't tightened this loop yet. So now that I have the tail through the cuff like that, I need to run it through this loop one more time before I tighten it. So finger through, hook the tail, pull it through that loop, tighten the tail, then pull your wrists apart to tighten down the loop on that locking knot. So now we have the planned spacing. We brought the wrists together to get a little bit of room to work. Now we'll move the wrists apart again. Now the two different knots are spaced apart appropriately. Now I can adjust my partner's wrists up to the level that is comfortable / tolerable for them. Make sure this wrist is appropriately supported. And now I can take my tail and I can tie it off however I wish. Now this exact same approach can be used to create sort of wide-spaced handcuffs that are made with rope. So I don't even need to untie it to get to that point. All I'm going to do is just let that tail fall, then let my partner's hands move to a natural position like that. So now you have these spaced cuffs, and you could add a little bit of a belly chain element to it by running the tail around the belly, maybe through the cuff again, or through that a little alternate loop, reversing tension, and then tying it off somewhere somehow, however you like. So this is the inline Burlington bowline. This is the regular Burlington bowline. My name's Lazarus Redmayne. If you learned a little something, please consider supporting us at patreon.com/TheDuchy.